Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lean right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, so in this video, Alvin and I will be giving our bipartisan recap of Trump's first day back in office. Yeah.
Yeah, so one president is out the door, another one is, I guess, back in the door, and we'll be recapping the first, I guess, 24 hours of Trump's presidency and sort of the final hours of Biden's presidency because that did not happen without significant actions taken by now the former president, President Biden here. I guess we can start off with, the pardon. So why don't you get off, start with that.
Yeah, so right before Biden left office, he took action to preemptively pardon um, people who aren't even really being investigated yet, but who Trump sort of has grudges against. For example, Dr. Fauci, who ran the U.S. response for the COVID-19 pandemic, General Mark Milley, who spoke against Trump repeatedly, and the entire January 6th committee, who was investigating January 6th, and some of Biden's own family members as well. So basically, the logic behind this is there's been this sort of fear that um, once Trump gets back in the office, he would use the Justice Department to thoroughly investigate the Biden administration, um, not because they did any particular crime, but just for the sake um, try of trying to get back at them for investigating him. And so to prevent that, Biden has taken action to just basically defend um, his family and people who he feels Trump would do that to. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a big conservative um, anger because of the lawfare that Trump has faced in the past, 1 or 2 years, ever since he left office. Of course, he's been under immense scrutiny. And now that he's back in power, a lot of conservatives want to see these people that do not align with Trump prosecuted as well. And I'm not sure how that's going to go. I mean, Trump did sign an executive order actually trying to stop the government from weaponizing the law against, political enemies, but I'm not sure if he wants that to apply to himself. So we'll see how that goes. But in terms of the pardons, I mean, obviously before the really even the final members, Biden had already issued many controversial pardons in his presidency. Maybe the most controversial I've actually heard of in a while, at least in the past few presidencies. I mean, first, he, of course, sort of infamously pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, after saying that he would not repeatedly on the campaign trail. He sort of has stopped caring about that promise. And then he went on to pardon a lot of people that had nonviolent drug offenses. And then he commuted people's sentences from having the death penalty to life in prison. These were a lot of very controversial actions that he did. But then finally, with the clock sort of ticking down till noon, he at the last moment decided to pardon also his family, which they didn't have any crimes that they weren't charged with any crimes. They were not convicted of any crimes, but the Constitution, as it is interpreted by the Supreme Court, does allow preemptive pardons, um, as was done for President Nixon, after Watergate. And
Hmm.
so, because of that, the president is allowed to do preemptive pardons without much of, controversy in terms of legal controversy, but definitely political controversy there. And a lot of the poly market, the betting odds of who Biden would pardon cash at the last minute. There was a lot of people very upset that were on no for Jim Biden. A lot of money bet there, but it ended up going to yes. So that was that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the controversy with the pardon, I'm not really going to say it's not controversial because of the people who were pardoned. I think it's been like, especially over the last couple presidents, it hasn't been really unusual for presidents to pardon family members. Like Bill Clinton, for example, pardoned, I believe, his half brother, and Trump pardoned I think his daughter's father-in-law, and now that guy's Trump's ambassador to France now. So yeah, that's not too unusual. The unique part about the Biden pardons here is you really haven't seen like preemptive pardons used so sweepingly. Like you haven't seen this many at a time. Like you mentioned Nixon before. I guess yeah, it was used for Nixon, but yeah, you haven't seen this many at one time. So that's the new and kind of groundbreaking thing here. But anyway, I think with that, maybe we can move on
Yeah,
to the actual
let's
inauguration.
sort of imagine Trump putting taking the oath, and now we're into the Trump presidency. So why don't you kick it off with sort of what happened immediately after he took office?
Oh, I mean, well, first I'll talk a little bit about, his inauguration speeches.
Sure.
I have some thoughts on the speech itself. I do think it was a little, I mean, it was a Trumpy speech. Like it wasn't like traditional US president. There was a lot of like there's other presidents in attendance, I believe. Biden was there, Obama was there, Clinton was there, Bush was there. Really, like all the former presidents were there. But I feel like it's kind of unusual to see in an inaugural address so much bashing of the current president. There's a lot of talk of a great betrayal like in the inaugural speech with Biden sitting right behind him. So I thought that was just like I mean I think that's a very Trump-esque play, but I don't know. It just didn't feel really unifying in that sense. And obviously there's a lot of other stuff thrown in there that I found pretty interesting. I mean, he talked about like in an inaugural address, he talked about like going into to like how we're gonna try to take back the Panama Canal, like in some like expansionist effort. So yeah, I found that whole thing like the speech itself was a little like I mean, okay, it's what you'd expect from like a Trump rally speech. I feel like yeah, I'm not sure if that should have been an inaugural address, but say la vie. That's the way it was. Um, I'm not. Oh, and another notable thing from the inauguration that I'm just thinking of now is a thing that was noted, particularly by the media, is there's a lot of corporate leaders at his inauguration. This is like pretty unique because you don't. This is pretty new for inaugurations. Like some of the richest tech CEOs in the country were all in attendance. You had what the Apple CEO, Amazon, Meta, Zuckerberg was there. I mean, obviously Elon was there with his control over Twitter. I mean now X and SpaceX and his companies there. Um, you had the TikTok CEO, and they were seated like in front of his cabinet picks too, which I found you know I don't know. I also found that a strange decision to make. But yes, I think that at least is a sign that big business and sort of those big corporate tech lobbyists are firmly behind Trump this time around in a way that they weren't in 2017.
Yes, I
So
think
that's
this
another
this
takeaway.
this sort of marks pretty remarkable turnaround. I mean, I don't know if you would classify it as that, but I certainly do
I would,
because
yeah.
if you look at the first Trump 1.0, you look at the first term, Trump was often antagonizing a lot of these tech companies, and the CEOs would respond because the CEOs didn't like that. I mean, I remember Trump and
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg having a rift. Of course, Trump was instantly banned on Facebook after January 6th, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And you had all these tech CEOs that were very, very against him. Trump was the one to initially lead the TikTok ban, which we'll talk about that later, but there's a whole host of things I want to talk about there. You also have, Elon, of course, now a very friendly CEO that, Elon used to honestly be very moderate. Now he's gone full MAGA, doing
Mm-hmm.
interesting salutes at rallies. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't even know if we can say certain words actually on this YouTube channel, but yeah, so you look at all these tech CEOs that are now kissing the ring, and so that I mean honestly that's very remarkable and is a really big boost to Trump because even if Trump had won in 2020, he would have not had this type of backing by all these CEOs. And honestly, I think he actually likes this path where he gets reelected 4 years later. He now has the backing of everyone behind him, and with that, I guess we'll turn to the executive orders, which I mean, actually, first, right after the inauguration, he actually signed some sort of useless, or I guess not useless
Mm-hmm.
ones, but but less big flashy ones. For example, he ordered all future inaugurations to be the U.S. flag to be flown at full mast. For example, a little petty
Hmm.
thing, and he also signed his appointments and sub appointments quickly to the Senate, which we'll also talk about that later because Marco Rubio has been confirmed to Secretary of State. But Luke, why don't you take it away with the first executive orders here with immigration?
Yes. So he signed a lot of stuff on immigration. Yeah, let me just open the article myself to make sure I have it all. Okay. So basically, first things first, he declared a national emergency at the southern border. Um, this opens up like federal funds and stuff, so it allows him to do some of his own spending on the border wall and whatever other. Basically, it allows him to use to move more resources to the border unilaterally without Congress, I believe. Um, so yes, that was one order. I found that a little interesting because I mean, border crossings, at least as of right now, are the lowest they've been since he left office. Um, but I mean, the need for a national emergency, I find a little questionable. But I mean, it gets resources there, so I guess that does make sense for him. Other other executive orders he passed. There was one changing the definition of birthright citizenship, which is blatantly unconstitutional, by the way. So basically, it would mean, normally in the United States, if you're born in the United States, you're automatically an American citizen. It changes the definition. So if you're an illegal immigrant and you come to the U.S. and you have a child here, they would no longer be an American citizen. This is against the 14th Amendment, as I said, pretty blatantly. I think there's already like 18 states challenging this in court, so I expect it to quickly be rescinded. So there's that. Um, he also halted refugee admissions programs. So I think as of right now, like the whole asylum process in the U.S. is like completely stalled, at least at the southern border. People can't even get in legally to work anymore. Um, like they closed down all the Biden era online programs to process migrants coming in legally to work. So there's that. I think he's what else? Oh yeah, and also moving. I think the last really notable thing is on immigration is um, he said he was going to use the military to secure the southern border. So the U.S. military would be involved with that. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
everything.
I think you covered pretty much everything here. Uh, so good job on the summary there. I know there was a lot.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot. Yeah.
yeah, but I think this is a lot of what his supporters, including me, would have voted for. I mean, this is some of the stuff that Republicans have been really pining for ever since he left office. A lot of Republicans think he didn't do nearly enough while he was president, actually in terms of curtailing immigration, both illegal and legal immigration. I do think maybe what you said was a little misleading, though, with
In terms
what
of
you
what?
in terms of the number of border crossings. Like, yeah, right now at this specific moment, it's low, but
Yes. Hmm.
throughout Biden's term, it was extremely
Very
high.
high. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
It
very,
did get
very,
really
very high.
high.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think a lot of the reasoning behind the state of emergency and everything is based off the past 4 years, how bad it was. It also generally is, I'm pretty sure, not as bad in the winter time because of it's harder to cross in the winter. So, but yeah. So,
Okay.
anyways, we will continue on though. I think there were some also actions on energy, and this is big because a lot of what Trump has been looking at really has been trying to find ways to lower the cost of living. That's sort of the biggest thing he ran on, other than immigration, I would say, right? Like economy and immigration were the top two issues for Americans generally, and definitely for Trump, because that's how he won the election. And so a lot of what he wants to do in terms of energy is to unlock American energy behind its reserves, and that is how he wants to, give Americans lower cost of goods. But that does, of course, come at a cost to the climate, and whether the U.S. gets punished for it does remain to be seen in the next 4 years. But and I guess also beyond that. But Trump did make a big showing of these. Actually, I mean, signing the executive order to get out of the Paris Climate Treaty was one of the big ones that he paraded actually at the Capital One Arena.
Hmm.
I don't know if you watched him do
I
the
didn't watch the actual signing, but
yes.
I saw like a clip of it. Yeah.
Yes, the Capital One Arena signings, he sort of reserved the biggest ones to do in front of the crowd. So he would have his lawyer sort of say what he was signing, and then everyone would be cheering, and then he would sign it, right? And now
Hmm.
this was one of the biggest ones that he wanted to do. So yeah, I'll just let you take it from here on this, and then move
Yeah.
on to the next section.
Just like a brief other points of that. He also
Yes.
declared a national emergency in energy. So those are like the two national emergencies he declared: immigration and in energy. Another one, I think, just like considering the time, like the timing, I do find this one weird also. Emergency, I think, is a bit of an exaggeration, especially when
Yeah,
you consider
it's
that the
lost
U.S.
its meaning
Yeah,
nowadays for
when the U.S. is producing more energy than it ever has in its entire history, both natural gas and clean energy wise. So I find that also, yeah, the emergency declaration seems a bit exaggerated there. But yes, obviously, yeah, there was that. I imagine him passing that is going to give him more executive powers to allow for offshore drilling, and just natural gas drilling in places in federal lands like in Alaska and stuff like that. So there's going to definitely be a lot of drilling, and this is obviously going to come at a cost in terms of global warming. The U.S. Under Trump now, he's re-exiting the Paris Climate Treaty. So yeah, that obviously holds nation or tries to push the world to generating less emissions, obviously trying to combat global warming. With the U.S. leaving that again, it's safe to say our emissions are probably going to be increasing at a quicker rate. Um, anyway, after that, there was what
you want
executive
to skip to this?
orders.
I mean there was some like some other stuff in this article, but this was really the big one that came next, right? The January
Yes,
6th.
yes. Definitely, yeah. Trump went and yeah, this is probably one of the biggest things. Yeah, speaking of abuses of pardon power, Trump went and pardoned almost every person involved in the January 6th insurrection. I believe he commuted the sentences of like a handful of people, like six, but it doesn't like I don't know who those six were because all of like the worst people who got like the longest sentences and who did the worst crimes, all of them got full pardons. So yeah, I don't know what those exceptions were for, but from what I could tell, yeah, regardless of if you brutalized a police officer or trespassed or whatever, you got a full pardon. Even like the militia members who were charged on like more serious charges of like seditious conspiracy and actually like who are going to the Capitol with the intention of overthrowing the government, with documented evidence of them plotting to do that. Even they got full pardons too. So, yeah, like all the Proud Boy members and Oath Keepers who were there. So, yeah, that was definitely very sweeping. No matter how many crimes you committed that day, you basically got off get out of jail free card from Trump here. So, I guess that just goes to show what loyalty means to Trump. Um,
Yeah, this is a big
yeah.
thing. I mean, it was also expected for sure. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
people were definitely expecting this. I guess there was a ton of pardon news then, right? Because you had all the Biden pardons, you had the Trump pardons. Really, there were tons of pardon headlines, sweeping
Yep.
pardons across the board. And honestly, I think I want to move on to the TikTok ban because this might honestly have one of the biggest ramifications that I didn't see coming because you had the TikTok ban and in the past few weeks it was sort of looming there. It was interesting how they timed the TikTok ban to actually take place right before Trump took office. I would think that's intentional, right? To set the TikTok ban for January 19th. I mean, I don't think you set anything for January 19th if that's not intentional, right? But regardless, the ban was set for it to happen under Biden's watch, and so Biden decided to just leave it up to Trump. And I think both sides played their cards pretty perfectly here. If the audience, if anyone in the audience studies game theory, they played their cards almost perfectly according to game theory. And what I would say is Trump, of course, he wants to take credit for the TikTok ban, for un TikTok banning, I should say, unbanning TikTok. But he also wants to be the guy that makes a deal with TikTok to, I guess, partially sell themselves to to the U.S. or some U.S. entity. And so he wants to push TikTok to the brink. And TikTok realizes they have to sort of suck up to Trump here, because if they don't suck up to Trump, their company in the U.S. Is going to have no more business. So they're going to probably strike some backroom deal with Trump. And in that backroom deal, I'm sure Trump told TikTok to give him some free propaganda. And so right before, right after the app went offline, there was a message that was pretty pro Trump. And then once TikTok was back online, there was another message that was pretty pro
Yeah.
Trump. And I think that's actually very good for Trump, because um, that's a free ad practically to over 100 million
Yeah, millions. Yep.
American users, saying, giving Trump credit. But that is another thing that goes on there, because if you are a parent and you're trying to discipline a kid, something you might say is, "Oh, you're such a good son, you're such a good daughter," and the daughter or son is going to have those expectations to live up to. And so TikTok here, by praising Trump over and over again, I think that actually has a hidden sort of intention here to make Trump have to live up to that expectation. The American people are going to be expecting Trump now to cut a deal. That puts more pressure on Trump and more leverage in the hands of TikTok here to get a better deal at the end of this. So I think that those messages were actually incredibly smart, and I'm sure TikTok has very smart people working behind it. But uh, why don't you give your thoughts as well?
I mean, okay. My thoughts on the ban itself, honestly, I don't like. I'm not a huge fan of TikTok. I mean, there's other ways to get that kind of short form video and stuff. But I don't know. I could go on my whole spiel on that. In terms of the substance of what Trump actually did here, I'm not sure how effective his executive order is going to be, because the law banning TikTok is what I said. It's a law. It's a law passed by Congress and signed by the president. So you can't just undo that with an executive order. So I expect like it could his executive order could face legal challenges and fall apart before the 75-day deadline. So that could happen. Also, there's a lot of factors here, because um, part of the TikTok ban is what TikTok itself does. They can choose whether or not to shut off their app, and they chose to do so for a couple hours a few days ago, as we saw. And there's entities like Google and Apple, who are following the law as is and still do not have TikTok on their app stores. So as in like they took TikTok off their app stores and have not restored it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of factors at play here. Personally, I find this flip-flop situation sort of weird, because Trump, like he's like the founder of the idea of getting rid of TikTok. And now he's kind of positioned himself as the hero of the app. So it just goes to show how things have flipped over the last maybe 5 or so years. But yeah, I guess we'll see how that saga turns out in the next few months, and see if whether or not Trump is able to convince them to sell. I really doubt they will, because I personally still believe that TikTok is just an extension of the Chinese Communist Party, and I feel like it would be against their interest to do so. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, I mean, I don't know. I mean, people that are very long time listeners to this channel will probably know that I'm very anti-China. And so obviously that goes along with that. I hope TikTok gets banned. I was a proponent of that early on, but I guess now Trump has reversed course, which kind of sucks, but that is what it is. I mean, I feel like whoever was president, I mean, even if Kamala won this, I feel like she would sort of be pressured to give TikTok some sort of deal as well here, with so many Americans getting extremely upset at their little dopamine app. So, regardless of that, we should move on now, because this video is not supposed to be incredibly long, to the polls. And the polls are interesting here, because you have the Trump transition polls. And then you have the Trump favorability polls, and you have the Trump approval polls, which are all sort of different, but uh, they sort of give the same honeymoon picture of Trump's presidency because back in the first presidency, Trump was really never popular at all. And especially after he left office, sort of in disgrace after January 6th, he was always looked at pretty poorly. But with Biden's presidency sort of going downhill with such high cost of living, people started to remember Trump's presidency more fondly in comparison, and so I think that helped sort of boost him to a net neutral rating. However, you sort of have some new polls here with some very positive numbers of how Trump has transitioned back to power. And this is sort of a biased pollster here in Insider Advantage that is somewhat right leaning, but still a plus 17 poll to start off for Trump on his first day looks really good.
I mean, yeah, obviously, grains of salt. Like the poll came out during his inauguration before he did anything, so I feel like he did much, I should say. Like he just got in office for a couple hours, passed a couple executive orders. I think asking an approval poll of his presidency right after, like within hours of his presidency, is a little is obviously going to be a little bit messed up. But I mean, obviously, we're going to get more data in the days and weeks to come. I mean, I'm sure a plethora of polls are going to be itching to come out and see what people think of the first Trump presidency. But yes, obviously, this first poll is a really good sign if you are Trump. Yeah.
Yeah. And why don't you speak briefly about Marco Rubio?
Oh yeah. So Trump's first cabinet pick has been confirmed by the Senate of the United States. His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Um, yeah, the Senate basically just unanimously confirmed him. I mean, I think this makes perfect sense. Marco Rubio, before he was Secretary of State, he was senator from Florida. He was working in the Senate. These people were his colleagues, his coworkers, and I'm sure he leveraged those relationships to get a super easy confirmation here. So yeah, unanimous consent right there.
Yeah, I don't even know if he needed to leverage those connections because I mean honestly he's been seen as one of the best picks by Trump honestly, because even you would have probably voted to approve him, right? I mean, we were talking about this before in the tier list of cabinet picks, but this guy is obviously very qualified. If you listen to the confirmation hearings, he sounded very qualified as well, answered every question very well, and being seen as uh, a very steady hand actually in a
Yeah.
time of uncertainty.
I,
What are you
I
saying?
personally am wondering how long it'll take for Trump to fire him, honestly.
Yeah,
I feel
I'm
like he
not
might be one of the
sure.
first on the chopping block, but we'll see.
I actually don't think Trump will fire him. Actually, I think because firing someone in your cabinet this early would look pretty
Oh, no, no,
bad.
no. Yeah, not this early,
So,
but like a year out from
yeah,
now.
well, yeah, I don't know. I still don't think he is gonna get fired, honestly. But we'll see. What happens? I guess that's your hot take
That's my take.
of
Yeah.
that's your hot take. But we'll see the other confirmation hearings that'll come eventually because there's a lot of them that are likely going to sail through, but there's some like Tulsi Gabbards and RFKs that could be a little interesting. Pete Hegseth, also breaking news that just came out while we're recording this video, is that his ex sister in law has accused him of being abusive towards his second wife. So that is why his odds have tanked just slightly here. But yeah, still remains pretty high with commitments by enough senators to get him
Yeah.
through the door. So that is about it. Really, we just have two picks that could be tanked, really, Tulsi and RFK, but they both of them seem like they're going to be fine with such a big Republican majority in the Senate. But any last words before we close out the video?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I just a note randomly, like I feel like it seems like Trump got a lot done today. I mean, of course, I think this is the standard for first days of presidencies. I remember back 4 years ago, Biden was pumping out executive orders the same way. So yeah, I think
Yeah, for sure.
this is pretty standard. Um, usage of the executive, I would say. I would note also there's a couple other things we didn't really get to. And I guess I'll just bring them up briefly. Trump left the World Health Organization,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
like he did
sure.
back in 20, so he re-left that. He re-implemented Schedule F so he could mass fire and replace workers in the bureaucracy. And also he mentioned that he would start instituting tariffs by next in the next week or two against Canada and Mexico, like 25% tariffs against both our largest trade partners. So there's some other notable stuff. And I'm sure we're going to see a little bit more in the weeks to come, especially with confirmations and stuff like that. But yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, for sure. Stay tuned. Honestly, actually, a quick note on those tariffs, though. Apparently, the stock market actually reacted pretty positively to his tariff announcements because they actually think that they were a lot softer than what he initially was indicating. And so, actually, the U.S. stock markets have risen in response to that. So maybe he's not going to be as harsh as we first thought initially. But regardless, that's about it for today's video. Trump's first day in office. I'm sure we'll be covering Trump's presidency in depth in the next months. For example, his first 100 days usually is a big milestone, so we'll be looking at that for sure. And so make sure you leave a like on this video down below if you enjoyed. Comment down below future suggestions for this Trump presidency's videos. Subscribe to the channel below because you don't want to miss this our videos with how much is going to happen. I'm sure Trump usually makes the news cycle a lot more fun, at least, than Biden's presidency. And share this video with your family and friends. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.